What if I told you there's another Super Mario Bros. Movie that you might not have heard of? And I'm not referring to the 1993 live-action movie with Bob Hoskins. No, I'm talking about Super Mario Bros. The Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach. This is only an hour long. It came out in 1986, only in Japan, which is probably why most of you have never heard of this movie. Since then, there have been 4K remasters. There's even a fan dub out there somewhere. The version I watched was a subtitled translation from the YouTube channel Magibolt1, and let me tell you, I think this movie is more bizarre than the live-action 1993 one, even though it's more faithful to the source material. That said, it's a very important movie, as this was one of the 2 first ever films based on video games, as another movie that was based on Running Boy released the same day. So, as strange as this Mario movie is, it was revolutionary to say the least. As I watched this bizarre film, I couldn't help but notice that there are quite a few similarities the new movie has with this one. Let's get into what they are. The first one is obvious. Both are pretty faithful to the source material, albeit one more than the other. Granted, the old one came out only a year after Super Mario Bros. Released, so there were still quite a few creative liberties taken. For one, the Mario Brothers aren't plumbers in this, they own a general store in the desert, which is quite interesting because I felt like it was established really early on with Mario Bros. That they were plumbers, but I guess they decided to make them general store owners instead. Even then, there's a lot of pipes in this world. The enemy designs are really similar. Peach and Bowser look the same, as well as the Mario Bros. Even though Luigi's not green, he's like blue and yellow for some reason. I don't get that. Of course, the new Mario movie is a lot more faithful to the source material. The Mario Bros. Are plumbers in this. The Toads look and act like Toads, unlike in the old Mario movie, where I guess they're all cutesy dolls who've all been turned into coins by Bowser, or Koopa as he's called in that one. There's also a blue dog in the old one that kind of looks like a Wiggler, which I don't remember appearing in any of the games. Oh, and it turns out at the end, he's been a prince this whole time who has to marry Princess Peach. What? So even though the new one is more faithful than the old one kind of gets some leeway because it only came out a year after Super Mario Bros. So they had to get creative with a lot of the things, like adding that hermit wizard Gandalf dude that I don't even think he even has a name in it. They didn't bother to ask, hey, what's your name? He just gave them exposition right away. It's also clear that both of these movies are origin stories for the Mario Bros. And how they entered the Mushroom Kingdom, although in the anime film, it seems like it has a pretty definitive conclusion. They're not building up to another story later, because at the end, the Mario Bros. Just go back to their own world and they don't seem to have any interest in returning. Whereas in the 2023 movie, they actually live in the Mushroom Kingdom by the end, so we're gonna see these guys go on a lot more adventures here. What's also interesting is at the beginning of each movie, Mario is playing on an NES. In the 1986 movie, he's playing on a Famicom, which is what it was called in Japan, and in the new one, he's playing on like a literal NES. He's playing an actual NES game too, that being Kid Icarus, which also brings up another point. Both of these serve as like storytelling elements, one more so than the other. In the new movie, as Mario's playing the NES, he's playing Kid Icarus, he gets a game over and it says, I'm finished, which is kind of how the Mario Bros. Are feeling at this point. They're just done, they're finished, they're bad plumbers, you know, stuff like that. However, it's taken to a completely new level in the 1986 movie, where he's playing a made-up looking game with a kid with a baseball bat, and it kind of has Super Mario Bros. Elements to it. Then the TV turns into like a portal for the Mushroom Kingdom, I guess, as Peach is chased out of the TV by Koopa and his minions, and then Koopa comes out of the TV and kidnaps her, and you'd think that's where Mario would jump in and rescue, but I guess not. Instead, Mario and Luigi enter the Mushroom Kingdom by going down a pipe in the middle of the desert. Why wouldn't they have just gone into the TV? I don't understand that writing choice one bit. It's very bizarre stuff. And that's another thing these movies have in common, is how the Mario Bros get to the Mushroom Kingdom. They get there via warp pipe, of course. Even the transitions to the Mushroom Kingdom look the same. They go down the warp pipes and they're being transported through like this interdimensional portal with some bright, colorful animations going into that new dimension. So again, this is an obvious similarity, but it is interesting just how similar they are in execution. Now let's talk about Bowser though, as his motives are the same in both movies. He wants to marry Princess Peach. Whether it be for power, whether it be for love, it's definitely for love. He loves Princess Peach. But what the 2023 movie has that the 1986 movie doesn't have is a musical number from Jack Black. Which just goes to show he's way more in love with Peach in the new movie than he is in the old one, and it's displayed well thanks to Jack Black's golden voice.
Peaches, 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 ah, oh, yeah.
And in the 1986 movie, Peach is kidnapped by Bowser waiting for that royal wedding, and how else are the Mario Bros gonna get to her than by traveling through the world, which is another thing that happened in the 2023 film, albeit in a more quick succession, because there was a montage that played showing Bob-omb Battlefield, it showed Toast Arena from Super Mario Odyssey, so even though that was an expedition throughout the Mushroom Kingdom to get to the kidnapped Luigi, it wasn't as much of an adventure film as the 1986 Mario movie, where Mario and Luigi are going through different areas, facing different obstacles in each area, and that's what made it feel like more of an adventure in that sense. They had to find 3 items to complete the Triforce. Yes, the Triforce. It's a different Triforce, but it's called the Triforce. It's something else. And like the new Mario movie, you get little musical montages between each section. And speaking of music, both movies use tracks from the games. Whereas the 1986 movie uses tracks that feel like they were ripped straight out of an NES with no adjustments at all. The new movie uses recompositions from Koji Kondo and Brian Tyler, so they're giving a more cinematic touch to them.
And up we go.
Wait, up?
Love the compositions in the new movie, although it is appreciated that the audio from the games is ripped right out of the NES and put into the 1986 film. Some tracks might have been slightly modified, but for the most part, they sound like they came directly from Super Mario Bros. Even a lot of the sound effects too. Every time Mario jumps, it's the same sound effect from the games. Really cool stuff. And what I find interesting about both movies is that before their respective climaxes, there's an underwater section. In the 1986 film, Mario swimming underwater to get one piece of the Triforce and encounters a big, huge blooper enemy, which was really cool. And in the 2023 film, Mario and Donkey Kong fall into the ocean, where they're subsequently eaten by an eel, a giant eel from Mario 64. You also see a blooper, but it's not nearly as dangerous as that giant eel. And in both movies, they exit the ocean by flying. In 1986, it's a flying ship. In 2023, it's one of Donkey Kong's rockets. They both fly away into the climax, which is where we get a wedding. That's right, in both movies, Bowser is about to marry Peach, but the wedding gets called off for whatever reason. In the 2023 film, it turns out she's hiding an ice flower in her bouquet. In the 1986 film, Mario and Luigi become Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson in Wedding Crashers. And thus, the final fight ensues in an epic climax. I guess you can call the 1986 climax epic. It's clear Illumination had a way bigger budget than Grouper Productions did in 1986. And the thing that both movies have in common is that they involve the Superstar, the Invincibility Star. It's actually one of the 3 parts of the so-called Triforce in the 1986 film. Mario ingests a flower, a mushroom, and that star at the very last moment to become a super-powered plumber, or general store owner in this case, to just beat Koopa to a pulp. And in the 2023 film, Mario and Luigi get the Invincibility Star, and then that classic music plays, same with the 1986 film, and then Mario and Luigi just pummel the crap out of all of Bowser's minions and Bowser himself. And this is where I noticed another similarity between the two movies. It's how they knock out Bowser for good. In the 2023 film, they pull a Mario 64 and they grab him by the tail and throw him up in the sky, and then they jump in the sky and punch him back down to the ground. Not unlike the 1986 film, which actually predates Mario 64, he grabs Koopa by the tail and throws him up into the sky. It's crazy how this movie seemed to have predicted this would be a mechanic in future Bowser boss battles. Not only that, they also predicted that Mario would be able to ride Lakitu's cloud. So this movie has some power. And finally, the last thing I noticed the two movies have in common is that they have after-credits scenes. In the 1986 film, we cut back to Mario and Luigi's general store, where Koopa and his minions are working there for some reason. I looked this up and Wikipedia says this was his punishment, I guess. though it's not explicitly explained in the movie. So I thought maybe this was a cliffhanger to something, like the end credits scene in the new Super Mario Bros. Movie, which teased the introduction of Yoshi. So I guess you could say the real final similarity is that both movies have after credit scenes. I was gonna say that they are both cliffhangers, but I guess the 1986 movie doesn't really have a cliffhanger, it's just a post-credit scene. And those are the similarities I've found between the two movies, the 1986 Mario movie and the 2023 Super Mario Bros. Movie. One's clearly better than the other, it's the new one, obviously. Of course, back then in 1986, the Super Mario Bros. Game has only been out for a year, so I did have to take some creative liberties, and for the most part, it's really faithful to the source material in terms of how the characters look, in terms of how the Mushroom Kingdom looks. But man, it's just weird. It is a strange movie. So if I had to rate the movies, including the 1993 live action one, I'd give the new one a 9 out of 10, the 1993 one a 5 out of 10, and I know some of you might get mad at me for this, but the 1986 one gets a 4 out of 10 from me. Look, I know the live action film is super derivative and weird in its own way, but at least the plot is somewhat cohesive. There is some dumb stuff in there, like how fixing the meteor that killed the dinosaurs would somehow merge dimensions, but it's not nearly as dumb as Mario getting distracted by a bowl of rice that just pops up out of thin air with no rhyme or reason. Also, remember when all those characters somehow came out of the Famicom at the beginning? Yeah, that's never brought up again. Truthfully, I don't see myself watching this movie ever again, unlike the 2023 film, and also unlike the 1993 film, which I still occasionally watch.
Monkey!
But if you want to check out that movie for yourself, be my guest. It's only an hour long, so if you have an hour to kill, you can go on a literal fever dream just by watching that movie. But let me know in the comments what you think of both movies. Have you even seen that original movie? In the end, that about does it for me, so I will see you all next time. Bye-bye!